So the temperature outside feels like it's in the negatives right now, but that is not stopping me from planting my warm summer garden. So I'm just dreaming of the warm sunny days that are ahead, hopefully in the next few months anyway. This is only my second year actually having a garden where I've really truly put effort into it. Last year when it was about March, I was like, uh-oh, haven't ordered any seeds. Haven't even thought about this yet, and I feel if you really want to get ahead of it, a lot of seed companies are selling out really quickly, especially in these early months of the new year, because people down south obviously have a longer growing season, so their growing season starts way sooner than mine. I am up in Wisconsin, so my growing season doesn't start until May. For the most part, I really can't get true planting done until May. The last frost dates really are in May, so I've got quite a few months to go still. However, it's still good to plan and prep ahead, so I have ordered my seeds. So I want to share with you some of that today. And then I just want to talk about my 2025 garden recap, just share some things that I learned in my first year. I didn't really film a ton because I wasn't really doing YouTube or posting on my Instagram or anything, but I did have a couple clips that I'll kind of include in here just for fun that I just took. I had a lot of learnings from last year, which was my first year doing it at our property, which is where we're likely going to be keeping most of the garden this year. So there's still some things we want to work through. My husband Brian has been helping me with a lot of it, but we do have this house now, and so there may be a few things that I'll keep here instead of out there. So we have a couple different properties, and the garden was on the one property and not where we were living, and it's still not where we're living. So there's different factors and different complications with that as well. So I just kind of wanted to talk through some of that. This is just going to be a very chill video, not a ton of structure to it. I'll include, I'll try to make it a little bit easier to follow along, but mostly just a chatty video to talk about some garden stuff as I'm still learning. And I absolutely want all of your advice down in the comments. So if you are a seasoned gardener, please give me your tips. And I know it's tough. If you live in Florida and I'm in Wisconsin, we have very different growing seasons. So some of your advice may not apply to me and vice versa to you that I'm saying, even though I don't really have a ton of advice, but I still think it's kind of fun just to talk about growing food and supplying food for yourself or your family, and just learning how to provide in that way is so fascinating to me. So it is definitely a hobby I've started to get into, and I can't wait to keep learning. And there's a few things I want to try this year. I think we should hop right in because my battery does not have a lot of life left in it today. So let's get going. Okay, so I have a good old-fashioned notebook with pencil. I don't know the last time I wrote in pencil. It's always pen. And this is where I kind of started some of my 2025 garden plans. I do also have it on my computer too, but I kind of had a list of like all of the, plants I wanted to plant and when I needed to plant them and all that, because before I got into this, I did not realize how strategic you have to be, like when certain plants can go in the ground. I just thought you could plant everything all at once. And while we pretty much did that last year, we waited super long, did it like at the end of May. I think definitely caused issues with why some plants didn't grow. So I have that noted, and definitely is definitely something I want to adjust and try and fix for next year or this coming year. And I did have a layout here. So this was my garden layout. So my garden was about 24.5 feet long it was really not even. So each side is kind of different. So it was about 28 feet long by over 16 feet wide. So it was a pretty big garden. And I had one walkway in the middle and 2 rows of plants that we did. This is something we just started this past year, and we were building it on raw land. So this land really hasn't been touched for any gardening purposes. Anything that's been planted, it's been all nature and natural. So it was a little bit tougher, I think, to try and get the soil correct. We did a lot of tilling to begin and start to get the ground really built up. And then we did some fertilizer. I would say weeding, we tried to stay on top of it, especially early on. It's hard to tell the difference between the seedlings that are just sprouting and weeds. So that was another thing that was an interesting learning curve. Once the seeds felt like they kind of sprouted enough, I would say that was like mid-June for us, mid to late June maybe. That's when we went in and added some hay bales to the walkway and kind of around the plants, and that definitely helped with the weeds. But the weeds were definitely out of control there. This is the first time using that, piece of land, like I had said. So it was definitely a challenge. And so if you have any weed tips, let me know. I think we'll definitely buy hay from a local farmer again and just try to use that, or maybe with straw. What's the difference between hay and straw? The list of vegetables that we planted last year are as follows. I did potatoes, onions, tomatoes and basil, peppers, lettuce, dill and cucumbers, zucchini, cilantro, garlic, and mini pumpkins. The things that did not grow at all that we know of, because maybe it got mixed in with weeds, but that I know of were the lettuce and basil. Potatoes did not grow. And those were the only things that didn't grow. Cucumbers sprouted and had like the leaves, but they never actually grew the plant or the the vegetable. So it had something above ground, but we never collected any cucumbers, which was a big bummer because I wanted to make a lot of pickles and I couldn't. Dill also, I don't know if I mentioned that one, but the dill didn't either with cucumbers. Lettuce never saw anything. Our onions, they sprouted really quickly and they were actually going strong, but I think we planted them way too late because the bulbs only got to be about this big. So they were really small. We only did red onions. Actually, I think I did chives too. Never saw any chives. And then the basil never poked above ground that I could tell. Again, the weeds may have been a factor. I was trying to do that companion planting where planting not only the vegetables that can kind of go near each other, just that are okay growing near each other, but also that can help each other. So like I was doing the basil around the tomatoes, I was doing the dill around the cucumbers, but I really struggled with the herbs in the ground. And so I think this year I'm going to do herbs completely separate in their own little planters, probably at our house and not keeping them at our property. The cilantro though, that was the only herb that grew abundantly, but then it was hard because there were a lot of weeds and just trying to keep on top of it. So the thistles were the worst. Those things were so bad. Zucchinis, I know zucchinis are often like, oh my gosh, people have an abundance of them. Yeah, absolutely. We had four different plants that we planted. 3 of them grew and we were drowning in zucchini. Drowning. I have so much zucchini in my freezer still. I saved some, I shredded some, I chopped some just to put in the freezer for baked goods later, but I'm not going to plant any of that this year because every time I went out there, I had zucchini that were like this long at least. And I know you don't want to let them grow that long, but because of where our garden was, it was at our property and not where we were living at the time. We had to drive 15 minutes just to get there, and so I wasn't there every day. We did start our tomatoes and peppers from plants. They were just the baby little plants. Those actually did okay. They grew eventually. The peppers actually didn't really do that well. The tomatoes did okay. Romas, I think San Marzanos, or did we do a different kind? We did 2 different kinds of tomatoes, but we got really baby ones every time we picked them. So those were okay. There were a lot of tomatoes that grew, but then they didn't fully ripen, which I think is a kind of an issue a lot of people had last year. But if you have tips for helping get the plant to keep producing but also ripening, that's the biggest thing. And I think this year we're going to try it a little different. We're going to start from a seed, but I want to start it inside, so I'll get to that. My pumpkins grew great. They really expanded. We know pumpkins really like to spread, just like those zucchinis. So I think we're gonna do some baby pumpkins, but we may do them separately this year because we have more space to do it outside of the garden, but I'll get to that. The garlic, I know that one is technically supposed to be more of a fall plant. Or you kind of plant it opposite of when you would plant like your summer harvest. And we did get one to sprout, but the actual bulb didn't get very big, but it got super tall. So that's another one that I may start playing around with when it comes to more fall time, planting garlic so that we have it for the spring so it can kind of grow over the winter. But that one is kind of my trial and error. That one's definitely going to be an interesting test because it's a little bit different than the rest of them. We did do a fence, and the biggest concern we had this year was because where we are, our property is very secluded. Like I said, it's raw land, and so there's a ton of deer on there, and we really thought the deer were gonna get in there, but they didn't. I don't think we had a single deer get into our garden. We had some rabbit droppings, but they didn't even really seem to really get into my garden either, so I was very impressed with that. What we did do is we did a wired fence all around, and then about a foot out from that, we did stakes with string and some dangling like ribbon to try to create that distance between the metal fence and then that string, so that when deer, if they tried to jump the fence, because it definitely was not tall enough where they couldn't jump over it, but where we did the string, it was to create that distance because it's hard for them to see depth, and their depth perception is not very good. And so that kind of freaks them out, which is why they don't even attempt to jump over. So I think that actually really helped, and that's definitely where we're going to keep the majority of the garden next year. I do want to make it feel prettier because of where it was. We cleared this space of land because we thought we were going to build, and so we shoved it off into the corner because that's where we were anticipating the garden would be long term. Well, we ended up not building. We bought this other house, and so we have all this space where we were going to build the house, so we may end up planting other things out there that we don't necessarily care about that really need to sprawl. So like the pumpkins, and I kind of want to try watermelon. The deer will likely get into that, but keeping that other space separate for more of my precious plants, that's what I'm kind of envisioning. And it'd be nice to clear it up and maybe make it a little nicer. I have extra wildflower seeds I could plant around it. It'd be nice to create a little walkway path. It was just kind of a rinky-dink operation last year while we were just trying to get it set up and going. But it'd be nice to make it look and feel nice so that I can enjoy going out there. Oh, the only other thing I could talk about quick about last year was my canning stuff. So I don't know if I ever ended up sharing with you. I know I filmed the first time I ever canned jam. I don't think I ever posted it though, because I think it was in one of the vlogs I never posted. But I have canned a ton of jams since starting this. So we've done strawberry and raspberry jam. I've done blackberry and raspberry jam. Last year specifically, I tried tomato sauce, like spaghetti sauce. However, I did have to use some tomatoes from the store. So it'd be really cool to get an abundance of tomatoes this year because there's a lot of things that we would use them for. Pasta sauce, pizza sauce, spaghetti, just canned diced tomatoes, a lot of different things. So we really want to try and work on the abundance of tomatoes this year. I also canned chipotles and adobo. I did order chipotles and then was able to use some tomato stuff for that, but that wasn't necessarily straight from the garden. That was stuff I've purchased from stores. Pickles, I had to buy the cucumbers from a local farmer, but I was able to do those. They were bigger though. They weren't like the perfect pickling cucumber, so that's what I really want to focus on this year. And then I also did some type of Asian zing sauce. That one was okay. It didn't turn out the greatest. I think it'd be best for stir fry. So I have a lot of canned goods from last year and the year before. So I think my plan this year is going to change a little bit with canning. We do have wild raspberries and blackberries on the property that just grow. So those are nice to pick for jam. And then we also, the last 2 years, went to a strawberry patch to pick strawberries. I have so much strawberry jam still, so I don't think we're gonna end up picking it for jam. We may just go for fun to pick it for something else, but I think I'm gonna cut back on my jams this year just because I have so much and I keep giving it to people, but I'm the only one that eats it. Brian doesn't eat it, shockingly, even though he loves sweets. So we're definitely drowning in jam right now. Now moving into my 2026 garden goals. So I'd say my top like 4 plants would be cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers, and zucchini and onions. Not zucchini. Those are my 4. Some new plants that I do want to try this year. I want to get a few spaghetti squash plants. I really love spaghetti squash. So just maybe 1 or 2 plants of those. I don't need a ton. Green beans. I love green beans. Those are my favorite vegetable. I don't know why we didn't try them last year, but I definitely want to try them this year. I did say watermelon, so that is another one that we want to add to the rotation. Couple like new goals that I'm working on that I think will be very fun. I would like to start seeds inside this year. I do also want to start saving seeds for harvesting for when it's the final harvest so I can use them for next year. That's something I did not do last year, but it'd be nice to try to save those seeds so then we could try and plant them for future. Again, I think kind of separating for sure. We'll have majority of this garden on our property. Our property is not far from where we live now. It'll be a lot easier to get there this year and actually water and keep up with it more often. But I do think that there will be a couple plants that we will end up keeping at our house. But TBD, the biggest thing is water. So we don't have water on the property that's like through a well or anything. We do have electricity, but we have no running water. And so while we get a lot of rain and it collects because we don't have great well draining soil, we don't really have which is good for some of the plants because it at least retains some of the moisture. But when it needs to be watered, we don't really have an easy way to get it. And so we bought some tool this year, which my husband's about to pick up from an auction. And that would be a great thing where we can at least take the water out of this ditch that we've dug that will collect a lot of the water, similar to like a rain barrel. So we're gonna experiment with a few different water ideas, and I'm excited to take you along for those too, because that was one of the biggest concerns from last year, I guess, is just having an easy way to water things. My canning schedule this year is really gonna be focused on tomatoes and pickles and peppers. I wanna try a few new condiment sauces like ketchup and barbecue. Probably won't be doing as much jam, but maybe making some more limeades or syrups instead. Well, that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe and stick around. I will see you in my next video. Bye.